Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to continue my little series of 5 sounds you should make on every new synthesizer you should get. And this time we're going to look at the MS20. We are going to create a kick, pad, lead, bass, and effect. I got them all. And they sound like this. So first up, we are going to create a kick sound. For this, we're not even going to use the oscillators. We're just going to rely on the sort of self-oscillation of the filters. So for the high pass, we're going to turn it up to about 2 to 3, and we're going to turn the resonance up to full. And then for the low pass, we're going to turn that up all the way, and then we're going to keep the resonance as it is. And then for the envelope generators at the bottom, which is going to be this envelope generator 2, we are going to increase that a little bit. You can hear it's starting to come in, and you can see we've got a little bit of sound on the oscilloscope there. We can start to shape the envelope now. So we'll go decay up a little bit, and then we got a little bit of release there, so we have a little tail on it. Now we can start to shape the filters a little bit more. And that's you can hear if I increase the high pass, we get more pitch. So looking for that sweet spot in there. There we go. Super simple, really effective. We can just shape this a bit more. A little bit more decay and sustain there. And then you just shape it to as needed sort of thing. So and there you go. There's our kick. Now let's move on to the next one, which is going to be the bass. Next up, we're going to make a 70s inspired sort of psychedelic, distorted, crazy bass. And let's get into it. So first up, we're going to look at the oscillators. Let's turn them both up. And just while we're creating the sounds, let's bring up a little bit of the envelope. Little bit of decay, sustain, and a bit of release, and let's open up the filter. What we want to do is we're going to tune the 2 oscillators, so then we can kind of create that sort of pseudo unison sort of feel. So we want the tuning to be 16 and 16 on both, so 16 feet on both, and then we're going to tune down the second oscillator. So let's and you can hear when it goes in like that, it goes from what they call beats, like the musical beats, and then it will come back in. So if I go back out of tune, you can hear the womp, womp, womp. That's the beats. And then when it smooths out, you know you know you're in tune again. So now we've kind of got the tuning all sorted out. Let's start looking at the filters. For the high pass, we're going to bring that up just a little bit. Not too crazy, and then we're going to bring up the resonance. So you can hear it kind of gives that sort of mouthy sort of sound. So we want to get it so when the filter's sort of at its close point, that it kind of boosts that low end a bit more. And then next we're going to pull down the low pass, and then we're going to add some the full resonance on there. And you can hear that it just kind of gets nice and gritty there. Next we're going to look at the envelope generator and the modulation generator, which is going to be, this is the LFO and then this is the envelope generator here. So for the modulation generator, let's increase that. We'll go into the middle for the shape. And we can kind of get like a little idea of how fast the LFO is moving by the light here. So, and then for the envelope generator, let's bring that up to like 4 o'clock. Now we're kind of getting into the ballpark of like that nice distorted. So next up, we're going to take out our patch cord and we're going to go from the wheel. It's like you can see the little icon for the wheel above it. And then we're going to go into the voltage control LP filter, which is the low pass filter. So that's this one here. And then we now have control over that filter without coming up here and changing it. We're just changing it via the wheel. Getting fancy pants with it, but that's how we do it. Kind of back that resonance off the high pass a little bit. Now we can shape the envelope generator too a little bit more, so let's bring that back. Let's bring out a little bit more. I want more of this envelope to be affected by the filter. There we go, we're getting closer. That sort of weird psychedelic bass. If I take away the second oscillator, it kind of goes a little bit thin and vanilla-y, but let's bring it back in. So there we go, nice noisy, gritty bass there. Next up, we're going to look at a Moog style lead, and let's get into it. So for oscillator 1 and 2, we're going to turn them up to full. Oscillator 1, we're going to keep as we're going to go to a sawtooth, and then same with oscillator 2. For the tuning, we're going to go back up, bring it, let's just get a little volume. Get it back in tune there. And we're going to go 8 foot on oscillator 2 and 8 foot on oscillator 1. So pretty standard sort of stuff. From here, let's look at the filters. For the high pass, we're going to keep all the way off and the resonance is going to be off. For the low pass, we're going to keep it at 7, and then we'll increase the resonance to about halfway. From here, we'll start to look at some of the modulation sources. For the cutoff, we are going to, for the low pass, sorry, we'll bring up the modulated, we'll keep the modulated generator off. We're going to go for envelope generator 2, we're going to go that up to full. So now this envelope generator here is affecting this filter. So let's start to shape this a little bit more. Bring up the decay and the sustain, and the release up to 7. So the decay and sustain are going to be full. And then next up, let's look at some of the frequency modulation, and we're going to go use the modulator generator just a hair. Bring up to 1. Shape will be in the middle, and then we're up to 2 or 3. Let's bring up a little portamento. Maybe a little bit more. A little bit of reverb on there. And there we go, a little kind of Moog style lead, but let's get on to the next one. Okay, next up we are going to create a spacey sort of pad. Even though the MS20 doesn't have, you can't play chords on it, we can still make something to kind of fill that void. And then if you send it out into your computer and then to a stereo reverb, you can kind of build that space out a little bit. So for this, let's go to oscillator 1, we'll go a sawtooth, we'll keep it as a, we'll go to a pulse on oscillator 2, and for the tuning, we'll go 16 foot on the oscillator 1, and then 8 foot on oscillator 2. We'll bring up the portamento a little bit. For the volume, we'll go around 6 or 7 oscillator 1, and then 8 or 9 on oscillator 2. For the filter, for the high pass, we're going to go about 2 or 3, and we're going to go the resonance to full, and then we're going to bring up the low pass a little bit, and we'll get the resonance to like 4 or 5-ish, or 3 or 4 rather. Let's look at some of the modulation sources now. So for this one, for the high pass, we'll keep the modulator generator to 0, but then we'll bring up envelope generator 2 to say 3, and then for the low pass, let's bring it to about 7 for the modulation generator, and then for the envelope generator, let's bring that up to like 8 or 9. So now we still have this super percussive sound because we haven't shaped the envelope generator yet. So for that, let's go about 4 or 5 for the attack. Decay will be halfway, sustain will be halfway, and then the release, one at sort of around 3/4 of the way. So we have a bit of movement in there. So now we'll grab our trusty patch cables, and then we're going to go from the CV keyboard out, so it will be open at the high end and then close at the low end. We'll go from the CV out into the low pass filter. We'll got a bit more movement now. We'll grab another patch cable and we're going to go from the wheel into the high pass. And now this is going to kind of tune the synth a little bit. So you can hear it drops down in pitch and then back up again. So keep it there. We'll open the sustain up a little bit, and we got a G sharp. So I'm just tuning the high pass filter. So then when I play it, when the wheel's in the middle, it will be like centered, and then goes up. Then we got down. If we add some reverb in there, and we got a cool little spacey pad that you can use within your music. Just keep going. Next up, lastly, we are going to create the effects. And lastly, what we're going to look at is a effect. So it's going to be, we're going to use the patch points a fair bit to modulate some stuff and to get some sort of sample and hold going. So let's get the basic patch up and running, and then we can look at the patch points after that. So for the first oscillator, we're going to go to the pulse width, and we're going to go all the way to the left. For the second oscillator, we're going to go to a thin pulse, and we'll go full volume on each. And then we're going to go to the lower setting for both of the tuning. For the filter, we're going to bring that up to about 3, and then we're going to bring up the resonance to about 7, and then on the low pass we'll go halfway to 5, and we'll go like 7, 8, 9-ish for the resonance there. Let's look at some of the envelope, but first let's add a little bit. There we'll go between 5 and 6, and for the low pass we'll go to about 4, and now we can start to look at the envelope generator. So let's go to halfway on the attack. Decay will be halfway, sustain halfway, and then the release will be all the way to nothing. And then for the LFO, we're going to look at, we'll go full on both, and then we'll go all the way over to the right, and then we're going to go to about 4. So we got this cool like little spacey sort of sound, but now this is where we can start to look at some of the patch points. So you can see here we have a sample and hold, but we need something to go into that sample and hold. So for that we're going to use some pink noise into the sample and hold, and it's not going to make, we're not going to hear anything yet. So from the out of that, we want to go into the total. So now we kind of got this crazy thing going on, but we need it to turn on and off. We have we have the frequencies there with the pink noise, but we need it to go on and off. So for that, we're going to use, we'll go to the clock in, and then for the clock in, we're going to use the little modulation generator. So if I pull it down, so you can see it there. And then we can start to look at some other bits and pieces to kind of grow this sound a little bit more. If we were to go and use the white noise instead of the pink, you'll hear the difference in the sound that it gives you. You get those little clicks in there. get a little bit more frequency wise, a little bit more movement. Just went up. Some weird sort of computer noise if we crank it up a little bit. These are the sort of sounds that you can get out of it. And hopefully you've kind of learned something by these tutorials, and just kind of, if you were scared of the patch bay, these videos have kind of given you a little insight into some of the stuff that it can do. And hopefully I've inspired you to create something today. And until next time, see you later.